Welcome back to the Powersport Institute for another one of our exciting tech tips. My name's Andy Parks, and what we're going to share with you today is how to flush the brake system, especially in an ABS unit. We're going to make sure that you know how to get the contaminated brake fluid out. It's not a very difficult process, doesn't require a lot of specialty tools, but it is incredibly important to make sure that the ABS unit itself has clean and fresh brake fluid in it at all times. This vehicle is about 3 years old, so it's about a year past its due date. And if we were to let this continue, it's going to be very time consuming and costly to replace or repair the ABS unit itself. So as you can see, for the brake fluid flushing procedure, there aren't any specialty tools required. It's a really pretty straightforward. We're going to put the best brake fluid we can back in that, which is the Golden Spectro Super .4. It's an outstanding product, and make sure that it keep our brake system working properly and in good condition for a long time. So a little tip I like, to avoid having to clean the cap later on after the process, I just take it off, remove it, and set it aside. We're going to put the wrench over the bleeder. Make sure you give yourself plenty of room to loosen it and tighten it, and then attach your hose to your catch bottle, and we're ready to push all that old contaminated brake fluid out of this brake system. And since this brake system is actually working properly and doesn't have any air in it, as long as I don't introduce any air into the system, all I have to do is loosen the bleeder and use the master cylinder to pump all the contaminated brake fluid out, and then keep refilling it with fresh fluid. Let the fresh fluid rinse all the contaminated fluid out, and within a few minutes, we're done. And we'll move on to the rear. So this is another great tip I've learned over the years, is just poking a small vent hole and a pour hole in the cap instead of removing the whole thing. Gives you a lot more control pouring the brake fluid back into the reservoir, especially on a vehicle like this that's inside of a gauge cluster, windscreen, and some bodywork. And again, we're just going to leave that brake bleeder open and use the master cylinder as a pump to use that fresh fluid to push all that old contaminated fluid out. Okay, and that looks great. Now we're getting only fresh, clean fluid out of the bleeder and the caliper, so we can tighten up the front brake system, top off the brake fluid, install the reservoir cap, and move on to the rear. So the brake fluid flushing procedure for the rear is exactly the same as the front. So we're going to start by removing the bleeder cap. We're going to install the wrench. We're going to get the hose for our catch bottle attached, remove the reservoir cap, and use the master cylinder to pump out all the contaminated brake fluid and rinse it out with the fresh new stuff. So as you can see, the rear master cylinder, the brake fluid is a dark color, indicating it's contaminated and has lost its ability to help protect the system from corrosion. So we're going to use the master cylinder as a pump to push all of that old contaminated brake fluid out and replace it with the Spectro Golden Supreme .4. And again, the most important part about this procedure, do not let the reservoir run dry. If you let the reservoir run dry, you're going to introduce air into the system, and that changes this entire process. It goes from a brake fluid flush, or a brake fluid change, to a brake bleeding. As soon as you see all that old contaminated darker color fluid evacuated out of the caliper and the master cylinder reservoir, so the only thing coming out of the brake system is nice, clean, clear brake fluid, the Spectro Golden Supreme .4, you're finished. We can top off our brake fluid, reinstall the reservoir cap, tighten the bleed screw, reinstall the cap. We're going to detail our vehicle for the customer and deliver to them so they can enjoy it and be able to stop happy and know that their vehicle and their brake system is going to perform at its best.